Hello and welcome again to 10 Things About Writing. Today we're going to talk about commitment. It's sometimes a challenge when you are writing and you feel that you've reached a point at which you're no longer entirely committed to your project anymore. Something else looks more interesting, newer, more exciting, and so you go to that and you forget about your initial project, and you find that becomes a habit, that you jump from one project to another and nothing ever gets finished. First of all, if this has happened to you, don't worry, you're not alone. It's a thing. We all get this, the idea that the next thing is going to be better and more exciting than the current thing, and it's absolutely something that all writers experience. However, at some point, all writers need to sit down on their arses and finish the project, because otherwise they will only ever have half-finished projects around. So that if this has happened to you, here are a few things that I've learned and you might find it useful to consider. First, examine the reason for which you find it's so easy to fall in love with new projects. And this is normal. It is entirely normal for people to be attracted to the new. New projects are fresh in your mind. You've not done any work on them. You haven't really explored any part of your new project, so it's all virgin territory. And sometimes that in itself, the joy of novelty, is something very beguiling. Also, starting things is much easier than finishing them off. And sometimes we enjoy the process of starting in very much the same way that we enjoy the excitement of being in love for the first time and dating for the first time and kissing somebody for the first time. And then afterwards it just becomes a little bit less interesting. Well, the same is true with writing and projects. But as in love, as in relationships, you can't have everything new all the time. You have to commit at some point. And the same is true for your project. You have to commit to your project. And understand that when the first flush of enthusiasm is over, there will be work to be done to make the relationship work. You will need to overcome obstacles, plan for the future, do some really quite boring things like editing and copy editing. All of these things will lead eventually to your project being finished and it being successful, but it's not a given that it's easy. And sometimes we like to drop what's beginning to be difficult for something which is easier, at least during its early stages. Another thing to consider is that perhaps you don't really want to finish a project. Because finishing a project is not only hard in terms of the work and commitment you have to put into it, but it also implies that when your project is finished, you're going to have to share it with somebody. If your objective is to be published, to be edited, to be read, then this is going to be something in your future, and it's quite a scary thing to think about that happening, to know that at some point when your project is finished, you will have to proceed to the next stage. Sometimes it can just be easier to go, I'm going to leave this unfinished and move on to something else because the something else will be better. Well, if the something else is better, and you know that it's going to be better, and you've thought about it objectively and decided that that is the project you want to work on and finish it, then fine. But you may find that you are dithering about, jumping from one project to another, and the only real reason underlying that is not because the new projects are any better, but because of this fear of letting go of your project and having it judged by somebody else. Don't underestimate that fear. It's very real, and we all feel it. All writers feel it, regardless of how successful they are. Everybody feels afraid to share their work for the first time and to have it judged by somebody else. And it's a fear you must let go of, because otherwise you will never finish a project, you'll never have a reader, you will never have that validation. It's part of the process. I'm not here to tell you to do it straight away. You have to wait until you're ready. But know that it is something that all writers share. The fear of having to let something go and give it to somebody else and potentially be told that it's no good. This has happened to all of us. All the writers you've heard of have been rejected in the same way, have been judged in the same way, and these things are valuable steps on the path to being accepted, to having a readership. It's something you have to acknowledge exists. So acknowledge the fear too, if that's what you feel, and push through it, because that is absolutely the only way you're going to get to the other side. So if you're in this situation, you have unfinished projects galore, but not a single finished one, go back to your thoughts on this. Decide whether it's because you're afraid, or whether it's simply because none of your projects have been good enough to finish, or maybe it's just you. Maybe you have a problem with work and commitment and you need to change your attitude. Decide which one of those reasons is holding you back and then power through it. That's how it's done. That's how simple and how difficult it is. Till next time, thank you for tuning in. Good luck and happy writing.